The Comte de la Riviere also was the recipient of the Grand Cross of the Royal and Military Order of St. Louis. This is one of the highest, most distinguishing awards that can be given in the French military at that time. So the Comte de la Riviere had received the Grand Cross. This award was started by the Sun King, Louis XIV. It was named after Louis IX, Saint Louis, the only king of France to be canonized. That's with one N. You put two N's in there and you have to fire him out of a cannon. So the only one to be canonized. And Saint Louis, this was back in the 13th century, 1200s, France was at the peak of its prestige. And Saint Louis, Louis the Just, was admired. Many times he was asked to adjudicate between two countries whenever they had disagreements. He was the one who started this idea of innocent until proven guilty. He's the one who did away of trial by ordeal. You remember one time, if you were accused, you and your accuser would just get in the arena and duke it out. And whomever won out, or trial by ordeal. So accused and accuser, there would be a boiling vat of oil, some object put in the bottom of it, and then both of you would have to dip your hands down to get this object out, and whoever was burned up the least was the winner, trial by ordeal. You remember Savonarola, the Dominican friar who caused such a fuss. He was going to prove his point, prove that the Lord endorsed his ideas by walking over hot burning coals. Usually it was a 9 feet distance, hot coals. And on the day he was going to do this was back in 1498, it rained. All the public looking at this, they took that rain which doused the coals as a sign that Savonarola was on the outs with the divine. And he was later executed. So King Louis IX, he did away with this trial by ordeal business. But his tolerance did have limits. Blasphemy was not tolerated. If you took the Lord's name in vain, mutilation of the lips and the tongue was your reward. So our Comte de la Riviere, this military man, had gotten this award and the Grand Cross, mind you. This Order of St. Louis had 3 tiers. One was the Grand Cross. This is where you wore a red sash from right shoulder down across your chest and a big star on the left chest. The second tier was the Commander, just the sash. And then the third tier, Chevalier, or the Knights. There were a lot of knights. There were 28 commanders. Rochambeau was a commander, and then only 8 Grand Crosses. Our Comte was of that elite order. The Comte de la Riviere had quite a distinguished heritage, and he would play a role in our Lafayette's education and in his marriage to come. So the Riviere family tree extended back to St. Louis, to Louis IX, back in the 13th century. Julie, this is Michel Louis' wife, her dowry was meager. Let's talk about that dowry. So the dowry was usually cash. Marriage back in feudal times had nothing to do with the heart. It was about cash, or the equivalent. So usually it was cash that the woman's family would give to the groom. Sometimes it could be property. In Julie's case, it was 1,000 livres a year, which in the great scheme of things was not much. It's interesting that our Christmas traditions, the stockings on the mantle, came because of dowries. St. Nicholas, tradition has it, flipped some coins into 3 stockings, so 3 peasant girls would have a dowry such that they could get married. Here's the real catch to that. There are some families who had too many girls. It parsed out the dowry. There wasn't enough. It didn't make the girls marketable. So some families would take the less attractive girls and have them take the veil, which is to say they'd send them to a convent, such that it would pad the dowry for the more marketable girls. just the way it was. So if you feel badly because you are defriended, think of how you'd feel if Dad comes in and said, here's your veil. Dowries were a big deal back then. Julie had a brother, Louis Henri de la Riviere. Remember primogeniture. All this wealth, her father, the Marquis, those estates, that would not come to Julie. It would go to Louis Henri.